I'm just wondering, was there ever a point during any of the interviews that you've done and any of the conversations that you've had that looking back on what had happened to you, that you've gained a little bit more insight? Was there ever anything that over the years you went, I never thought about that? Like maybe a smell or a certain feeling or a certain thought that popped into your head that,
Well, probably numerous times. There's been so many of them that it stimulates thought in areas that I hadn't personally soul searched before. Well, it was evolutionary to start with. Some of the early interviews, I was still locked into the early misconception of this experience as, alien monster invasion. And gradually, as I had time to reflect on what happened and analyze the meaning or purpose of it, it came to me that it wasn't an intentional case of alien creatures firing a weapon at me, but that I had somehow tripped a reaction, maybe an automatic protection device, or as I later thought, perhaps some sort of a discharge of a static electricity or some energy discharge from the craft to me, because it was at that moment that my head approached the surface of the craft the closest.
there's a case in Canada, actually, one of the most famous case, I would argue the most famous case in Canada, Michelac, the Falcon Lake incident. Have you ever heard of this one?
I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, because it was a similar sort of encounter. I believe also humanoid blonde beings as well, but this gentleman who had approached the craft was then also sort of zapped, and his shirt, I think now can be found in, I think it's the National UFO Archive in Albuquerque, New Mexico, David Marler. He's got the shirt that's all fried and zapped, but this guy had essentially radiation burns from trying to get too close to the craft as well.
Well, I I still have the same clothing when I was returned, and it was undamaged. It wasn't burnt, and no injuries on my body itself. Although, with a super high-tech recovery team, I suppose they could have restored all that before they brought me back.
True. That is true. You were missing for 5 days, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, 5 days and 6 hours.
That's, do you ever struggle with the amount of time that you were missing versus the information that you remember? Because it seems like there's a huge gap there.
Yeah, well, initially, assuming that I was unconscious or dead for the rest of the time, having occasionally some dreams involving the subject. And when I first inquired about it, I asked the screenwriter on Fire in the Sky, do you think these could be memories coming back to me? And he said, nah, he's probably just doing all these interviews, got you thinking about it. And then a while later, I asked him the same question. And he says, oh, yeah, those are probably memories coming back to you. So, he had done some research in the meantime, and it changed his opinion on things. But it didn't involve the smaller group of beings. It was involved the more human-looking ones. But nothing that formed any clear memory or of, events that made any sense.
Yeah. That's so strange. I mean, I think what makes the case so unique, this one, your case, compared to so many others, not only, was it witnessed by, was it 6 other people at the time? Not only, was there missing time involved, there was a whole search party involved. There was all sorts of really compelling pieces to this case. But the fact that there were multiple, what seems like multiple species involved, and normally, you'd be like, okay, well, that sounds just a little weird. Maybe they're related somehow, but these species individually also show up to other contactees or experiencers in their experiences as well, individually, but never together. What's your best hypothesis on why that is?
I think my best hypothesis was that I was panicked. Whatever damage occurred probably interfered with any sort of telepathic control or communication. And I was not going to cooperate with what I perceived to be threatening monsters. So I think that this entity, which appeared human, was brought in because that was all I was ever going to trust. It wasn't going to be them. I was combative.
You think that they were trying to subdue you mentally somehow, and that the damage you'd sustained prevented them from doing that?
Yeah. I think that I did not detect any sort of messages or feelings from them. So I'm assuming that was because of the extensive damage that I felt like I was dying. It was pretty heavy duty stuff. Otherwise, they could have stopped me from being combative, I would think.
Were you in any pain, awaking, coming out of that? Yeah.
Yeah, pain in my head and chest. I felt like I was dying.
What would you describe the pain as? Like migraines or like pressure?
Oh, yeah, all of the above. Hard to describe, but definitely something that provokes panic in me that this is definitely not good and getting worse by the second.
Yeah, that would be scary. At one point, during that time, you're obviously panicked. Now reflecting on it, you've had time to, really dwell on these thoughts and really look at different reasons why they might have done what they've done. But in that moment, did you think they were causing that pain?
Oh, yeah, I associated the pain with them, the horror of, all the stories that this type of being had been portrayed with. It was definitely maximum fear factor. I didn't perceive anything beneficent at that point. It was only after years of reflection that I came to realize that, they could have easily dumped my body off in some asteroid somewhere and let the crew get suspected forever of hiding my body successfully. And that'd been the end of it if the cover-up was all they were concerned with. But they made up for it. They corrected my mistake of getting too close.
Wow. You awoke, you see this light above you, see these figures sort of hovering over you, and through sheer panic and force of wanting to stay alive, you ended up reaching for an object on one of these tables that they had.
Yeah.
Could you describe in detail what that object looked like and what it felt like?
Well, I just needed something club-like, and it was, crude sort of thinking. It seemed like it had a little heft to it. It wasn't real heavy, but it wasn't like a glass tube. It was more like a solid rod of some kind. It had more to it than just a cylinder. But I wasn't looking at it musing what it was for. I was just something that would threaten them and keep them from getting any closer.
And this was a clear object, right?
Yeah.
So it was like a clear tube, but it wasn't necessarily glass. It was heavier than glass. And
yeah, no, don't know what it was. There was a variety of other instruments laid out there. Some of them looking metallic and twisted, something you might associate with surgical instruments, but
yeah,
it was my skin was never perforated that I know of.
Yeah, seeing those instruments, I think would, I've seen a lot of movies. I think many of us would react the same. So at this point, these beings they're like, we don't want any part of this. We're not meant to throw down. They're tiny little guys too, right? They're not these, like, you're a towering figure. You're in your 20s. You're a you're throwing logs around during the day. You're a boxer as well. I mean, you're a fighter. These guys didn't really want any part of that, it would seem.
Yeah.
And so they leave, but before they leave, you had a chance to sort of see what they were wearing and see sort of their physical appearance. Can you describe?
My attention was riveted on their faces, looking for signs of expression, threat, what were they looking at, that kind of stuff, which was very devoid of expression. So, but that was what I was paying the most attention to. It seemed to be sort of a loose-fitting, orangish-brown coverall sort of a thing, but their faces not revealing any emotion was naturally perceived as threat. If you're confronted with people who might be associated with the pain that you're feeling, the serious question of, am I going to survive this? And then to have no expression made it seem very grim, like a threat. When humans confront each other without expression, it's considered threatening, because a normal reaction is to smile or at least frown or in some way signal your intentions. But it took me a number of years to figure out, well, if they're telepathic, they don't need expression to communicate with each other. It's an obsolete method of communication, rather crude and primitive if you go to think about it, how complete and rich a full telepathic communication path would be.
Yeah. So on the loose fitting jumpers is interesting too. I always assumed they were just like skin tight jumpers, kind of like, the ones you hear about normally, but loose fitting is interesting. On these jumpers, did you notice an emblem or a sigil or any?
No insignia.
No insignia.
Of that nature. And, or how they dressed have anything to do with, any activity they might have outside of the craft or not, I don't know.
Right. So these beings, they scurry sort of through a door.
Yeah.
This door opens and closes, or was this just an opening?
It was just an opening.
Just an opening. And then you hurriedly, and now, first of all, how high is this room? Because you're a tall guy. These are short beings, I assume.
Very low ceiling, very small,
very small.
Cramped space.
And the table itself.
Claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had sort of like a humid nature to it, right? In the room, sort of like a hard to breathe, kind of like denser atmosphere, It would seem.
And the table was low, closer to the floor,
Were your legs hanging off the table?
No, but it wasn't high enough off the table. When I rolled off of it and stood up, it was not far to the floor. I mean, it's not normal table height, I'd say.
But the length of the table was human length.
Yeah.
I find that to be interesting.
And there was a light above me. Not bright. It seemed to increase my pain to look in that direction, but I think that had something to do with my injury, not with the brightness of the light.
Right. So you find yourself now turning down this hallway, hopefully finding an exit, getting out of here. And this is like a rounded sort of narrow hallway, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And, I was planning an escape in that direction. I mean, I made it as far as this, what's been interpreted as a navigation room or maybe a control room or something of that nature, but something that was capable of viewing what's called a star map, or maybe simply a a view of where it was in space. But movement of one lever had the effect of moving the star pattern, and it moved not swirling among, like different, if so many, it wasn't assuming a different pattern, it was just the whole pattern rotating. But that was very brief. That it was startling and not at all what I was after. I was looking for some way to open a door and get out of there.
And that was, these controls were on this chair that was in the center of the room.
Yeah.
This low back sort of chair with what seemed like maybe joysticks or like controls or something on them. And you just kind of like panicked and pressed the buttons to try and figure out a way out.
Yeah, and that triggered, I don't know if it triggered, but almost immediately the doorway that I'd come through, which was lighter out in the hallway, darkened because someone entered. It was what I took to be a rescuer, a human-looking being. And I ran up to him just assuming that he was there to save me from these monsters. And I immediately started screaming, babbling, begging questions about, what was going on. But I didn't get any response, which wasn't too alarming because he wore a helmet over his head. So I thought maybe he can't hear me with that on or even speak with it on or be heard. So when he took me by the arm to lead me out of there, I was only too happy to cooperate.
Well, the description of this being struck me as kind of unique because we do hear about, ever since the 1950s, there have been, contactees who were in contact with beings of the same sort of nature, tall, sort of muscular, blonde figures that wore sort of tight-fitting suits. I'm reminded of George Adamski's, like earlier, contacts and so many others. But the one thing that stands out here is this sort of helmet, which I found really interesting because there's a case, which I shared with you before in 1954, a case in Staffordshire, England, where this lady and her two children, she was called outside by her two children. And they're like, "Mommy, look, there's a flying saucer." And she goes, "Don't be stupid. Those don't exist." And she looks up and she sees a silver saucer and it's tilted towards them like this. And in the saucer are two people who had these page boy bob haircuts. So like kind of like straight here, straight golden hair, tight fitting blue jumpers, and what she described as a fishbowl over their heads.
Wow. So these human-looking beings fit the verbal description I provided. Now, whether this was an actual being, some sort of robot or android created by the alien, or an actual intervention, I immediately took it to be an intervention, a rescuer forcibly coming in to save me from them. But in hindsight, it may have been they're powerless to help me because I'm in a panic and won't cooperate. So they get the only thing that I'm going to cooperate with is something that looked more like myself, whether that was a robot or a species very similar to humans, or even someone representing some American agency, secret agency of some kind. Who knows? But I was, that was correct. I was immediately going to cooperate with them and not with these creatures.
So I find it interesting that, that you would assume that the creatures were the ones in charge and that these human ones would be the ones that they summoned and not vice versa. Like, I mean, instinctively, and this, comes from zero knowledge, zero personal firsthand knowledge, but I would assume that like the ones doing the menial tasks, such as perhaps putting you back together and fixing you up, would be perhaps working for the human-like ones.
Yeah, there's all kinds of scenarios we can imagine, and many of them are equally fitting the facts of the case.
Yeah.
But they didn't speak. I was certainly screaming all kinds of stuff, but no, nothing that confirms any particular theory.
What's something that you screamed at them?
Who are you? What is this? What's going on? This is killing me. I'm dying. That kind of stuff.
Wow. And so this was a male who then took you into a separate room. Now there was a door that opened here.
Yeah.
Did the door open vertically?
No.
No, to the side?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it a round opening or like a square? Do you remember?
No, it was more like a doorway.
Just a regular doorway.
Just wide enough for us to get through.
Did it make a sound upon opening?
I don't
remember.
Don't remember any sound. I don't remember hearing it, but I was making a lot of noise.
Yeah, you're putting up a fuss.
Yeah,
rightfully so. I would say. So tell me what happens next.
Well, I was taken out of the craft down this steep ramp into a large hangar-like area. Now, I don't know whether this was a larger craft, part of a building somewhere. The lightings came from windows that curved. The room was shaped like a quarter of a cylinder laid on its side. So if you looked straight at the wall, it would have curved up and become the ceiling overhead. The light being given off was very much like sunlight, not terribly bright, nothing that would hurt your eyes to look at, but it was a soft light that lit up the area. I wasn't studying the look of things. I was very concerned with where I was being taken and this feeling of injury that I was dealing with.
Do you think that in that state you had already been sort of passed out for a long time, or do you think that was like near the beginning of?
That would be a guess.
Yeah.
Probably not immediately afterwards. As the force of what hit me was so powerful, the crew said they immediately screamed at each other, "It killed him. He's dead." That my body felt like a crumpled up rag. So whatever was undertaken to revive me had at least been partially successful, but still feeling very injured. And then I regained consciousness and then became a threat to my rescuers, as I assumed later.
So this place that they take you, which is, I assume some type of hangar, and like you said, don't know if it's some type of mothership situation or if it's on another planet or underground. It could have been anywhere.
Yeah.
The lighting seemed like sunlight, but could have also been artificial, much like,
Yeah.
the sort of simulation of daylight that we have here. And you noticed what seemed like several other crafts sort of lined up at these docks.
Yeah.
Can you describe those crafts?
I didn't study the details. I was very concerned with where I was being taken, but they were very silvery and rounded, like you might see in a glob of mercury, a very smooth surface.
Like the bean in Chicago? Something like that.
I don't know, but I assumed in my interpretation that just glancing over there and seeing this, that they were rounded silvery discs, but in hindsight, I couldn't see behind them, so I don't know how long they were. It's possible they could have been sort of more of an extended sphere kind of a look.
Yeah, like an oblong sort of shape.
Yeah, people keep on using the term tic-tac these days, but, an elongated, rounded tube.
A pill.
Yeah, like a pill. But I don't know. Couldn't see that deep, didn't look that far, wasn't paying that much attention. Where are you taking me? It was through some doors down a hallway to a room where there were some other people dressed like him, except not wearing helmets.
He was the only one who ever wore a helmet.
Right. And so, relieved that at last here's somebody without a helmet that can hear me and answer my questions, began firing away the same questions again. But this, just a matter of seconds, was going on from the time I was handed over to them to where I was forced down on the table. And I was fighting them. I was resisting. And when too hard for them, they were much stronger than me. I was in a very weakened condition at that point. And the mask that pushed over my face, I think, caused me to pass out. And that was the last I remembered.
It's interesting that they had like what seems like an analog way to anesthetize you rather than, what we hear about with so many people, like they just like shut you down mentally. But again, maybe they didn't have that capacity with you for whatever reason.
Yeah, if they'd have had that capacity, maybe they could have completed what work needed to be done right there on the original table.
Yeah, without a fuss.
Yeah.
Huh. There was a woman there as well, right?
Yeah, appeared to be female, but all of them with sort of idealized human physical builds to them. Well, the artwork got a little carried away, I think, but basically very healthy, strong-looking people that didn't have very much trouble overpowering me.
Would you say that their facial features were normal, or was there any abnormalities? Was there a heightened forehead, large eyes?
No, nothing of that sort. Just a sort of similarity to them.
Like a familial similarity.
Yeah. But not in a plastic, synthetic-looking way.
Sort of like brother-sister type deal.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Huh. So then, you then remember sort of being on the ground outside back on Earth, what seems, right?
Yeah.